Welcome to the Tearing It Up podcast. I'm your host, Taryn. We'll be tearing it up, tearing it down, and tearing it apart, dissecting all things related to those who deviate from the standard. From leaders of their industry to leaders of mediocrity, and maybe a gear review or two thrown in. We shoot the shit and let the conversations flow, so if that's not your style, this may not be for you. Otherwise, listen in. Hope to light a fire in you somehow. Hello, everybody. We are back, and we are back with a guest that we've had before. It's always exciting to have a returning guest and have a little catch-up episode, especially when some big things have happened since we've had the guest on the last time. So today we have Sensi Graves, and the last time we had her on the podcast was October of 2023. I just did a scroll through and actual search for the date because time is a vortex, and I was like, I know it was at Swell. The little gathering we had there, and it was a shorter 30-minute episode, but I'm like, but what the heck, that doesn't seem like it was as long ago as it was. It just seems like last year. But in that year and a half, a lot has changed for Sensi. A lot changed for her shortly after our conversation. So lots of catching up to do. So I'll introduce you all to Sensi, and she'll tell you a little bit about her businesses and kind of where we're heading in this conversation. And first off, today, Sensi, as we record, where are you physically in the world?
I am in my hometown of Hood River, Oregon. Just coming off of 2 months in Baja, Mexico, though. So that was great, but I'm happy to be home. I'm so grateful to be here. Thanks for having me again, Taryn and Amber.
Of course. Hey, not a bad time to transition back to Hood River. Couple months in Mexico and coming back when maybe the sun's poking out a little bit more up there.
Yeah, it's beautiful here. It's a beautiful day today. I'm stoked.
Love it. I also love that we have the trifecta of Amber in Washington, you in Oregon, then me in California.
Hey, West Coast.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. So the last time we chatted with you, we were talking all about Sensi swim, some identifying yourself as an athlete, finding confidence, right? And how you kind of do that and don't tie all of your worth into one thing. And I think that this conversation today might have some similar tie-ins to that, but at a totally different stage of life. So since we talked in October 2023, like I said, some big things happened. I know before our conversation, you had made a post again in 2023 about just folks' views on having children, and people who didn't have children, people who were having children, especially at a certain age in life. And then you shortly after were pregnant, but also went through a major life change with your husband and a major accident he had. So give us the kind of quick and dirty update on where kind of you're at today, and we'll dive into anything further from there.
Yes. Oh, whew. So much has happened. For listeners that don't know, I ran a swimwear company for 13 years. I started it when I was 23 years old. We went into that last time. It was a swimwear brand that was built on empowering women in water sports. I wanted suits that stayed put and also were really beautiful and functional and fun to wear. And I'm so proud of that brand. I shut it down at the end of 2024, just a few months ago, as a result of a ton of tumultuous life events that happened, as you said, very quickly after we last saw one another. At the end of 2023, November 2023, my husband was in a life-altering, threatening, changing accident. He crashed paragliding, actually speed flying. If anyone is in the know of the difference between those two. And he was in a coma for a week and was in critical care in the ICU in Portland. I was actually on a work trip in Canada and had to fly back. We didn't know if he was going to be a vegetable when he woke up. We didn't know if he was going to have ability to use all of his limbs. And it was very traumatizing, very scary time. He ended up being in the hospital for a little under a month and has made a miraculous recovery. We'll get into that. 2 weeks after his accident, he's in the hospital and I take a pregnancy test and I find out I'm pregnant. And it was a total surprise, absolute shock. I'm telling you, when I read that little strip on the pregnancy test, I was like, "What the F? What the F?" I was like, "I don't know if I can handle this right now." It was literally the first day I had been home since his accident because I was in Canada, flew home, was staying at a friend's place in Portland, which is an hour from my house, and so I didn't come home until 2 weeks after his accident, like, my first night at home, and I had this inkling I needed to take a test. Obviously, it was positive, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can handle this." We had a beautiful baby boy in July of 2024, and I really truly believe that he was sent to us at exactly the right time. We've had a super year full of healing and recovery. My husband has I think it's a lifelong thing, a traumatic brain injury, and so he initially coming out of the hospital was dealing with a lot of mania, which is crazy. I don't know if you guys have any experience with anyone with mania, but you are
No.
on another planet. It wasn't him, it wasn't my husband, and, for a whole year, I was just like, I'm lonely, I miss my husband. It's not the same person." After his mania, he experienced depression, and we're just, to be honest, just now kind of coming on the up. I think we've hit rock bottom and are on the upswing. And so this baby has just given us both a ton of purpose, a ton of joy, and really, I believe is just sent to us exactly when we needed him. And so, yeah, we went through a traumatic brain injury, a baby, and a shutdown of my business that I've been running for 13 years. And so, wow, it's been a lot, but I do
Yeah.
think I'm, like, coming out of it.
I mean, the fact that you're still just, like, here seem like you're obviously to us just you're radiant, happy, you're willing to share everything. So I know obviously it's all had its hardships, but you are still you and shining through and willing to, like I said, share because it's so much. And like I mentioned, before we had talked, I just very vividly remember your post talking about people's choices to not have kids. So being in that stage of life that a lot of women come to because hello, biological clock is real. We talk about it kind of pretty often here on the podcast. And being in like your mid to late 30s, I think is when it really kind of hits you where you feel like you have to make a choice. And so it's always nice to hear what other people's perspectives are, but obviously you have to choose what is right for you. And I'm just curious, like, the finding out you were pregnant, it was a surprise. Were you even at the point of like you guys decided you wanted to go that route and were like kind of trying but not trying too hard? Or was it totally like, we don't know yet and we're just gonna see what happens?
Yeah, great question because I was going through a tumultuous questioning, right before that of, like, do I wanna have kids or not? And I had read a couple great books on the topic. Women Without Kids is one of them, and was really just sitting with like, okay, I'm 35. I need to make a call here
Mhm.
because if we want to, we need to get started. And my husband had kind of prompted me. He put it on me really because he was like, I'm playing and anti-responsibility and, we live in our best life, but he was like, "Are you sure?" When I had voiced, I was like, I wanna start trying soon," and he was like, "Are you sure you want to?" And I was like, "I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm sure. I have no idea. What do you mean?"
Yeah.
But I'm so thankful to have gone through that process of really sitting with it and allowing myself to really think about it because I came to the conclusion, yes.
Mhm.
I was like, "Yeah, this is something I wanna do," and my husband, to be honest, was still a little bit resistant. But at that time, we were gonna start trying in January of 2024. And so, yeah, I had taken my IUD out, but we had a few other precautions in place. And so, it was like truly a surprise. We weren't actively trying, by any means. It was like, okay, no, we're gonna try it in like 2 months. But we got pregnant 10 days before his accident. And as I said, I'm so thankful for that. Number 1, that we got pregnant really easily
Mhm.
without even without even trying. But number 2, because there is no way that we would be trying, maybe not even now, because
Right.
a whole year after his accident with him at mania and then depression, I don't know that we would have the capacity or space or confidence that we could go on this journey. And as I said, our son, Flint, is just so much joy, and he gives both of us so much purpose and passion and love that it really has gotten us through this hard time.
I love that so much because, like I said, I'm sure in the moment of finding out you were pregnant and Brandon was still in the coma when you found out, or like at least,
He was not in the coma anymore, but just shortly after. Yeah,
well,
I
so
don't think really no, yeah, he remembers. He remembers me telling him, so he had actually been moved to his rehabilitation unit at that point,
okay.
so not in the ICU any longer, but still, he's there.
Yeah,
I was, like, so
regardless,
nervous to tell
yeah.
like,
W with
"Ah."
a traumatic brain injury, as you've said, it's like you just have no idea what the road ahead looks like in recovery, and just knowing that your life could be completely changed from that, like, that has to be probably the scariest time, especially being in that point beforehand of not really, like, both of you being at the same 100%, "Yeah, we're in," and then, like, "Hold on now, life just threw this crazy wrench at us," like, that's gotta provide like, bring a lot of questioning to you of like, "Oh my god, is like, did we make the right choice? Like, what's happening now?" But obviously, as life plays out, and like you've said, it's been the thing that has brought you both so much passion and purpose, and I'm sure has probably helped with your healing journey and the fact of just keeping you tied together. It can't be easy for either of you going through the healing process of a traumatic brain injury because obviously, you mentioned too, like, you went through the point of like, "I miss my husband, I want my husband," you're feeling alone, and I'm sure he was also feeling alone in and not himself, like, a piece of him is gone, and will he ever get himself back? And you're both going through your own journeys, like, independently but together too, and how do you see one another's side and, like, help each other through it when you're going through your own things? It's gotta just be so, so much.
It was really heavy. It was a really heavy 16, 15 months, and I think that coming out of it, really the strength that humans have is you really just step up. You just
Mhm,
step up with what you're given, and I
mhm,
really believe that the universe or God, source, however you wanna say it, doesn't give you more than you can handle. And at the time, right after his accident, I was like, "What the this is like, why did this happen?" I really was
mhm,
stuck in that question of why, because to be honest, I've gone through a lot of trauma in my life. I've had my dad been in prison multiple times for a total of 8 years. My younger brother was shot 3 times. My mom died when I was 16. Like, I've had a lot of heavy shit happen.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, I was just like, "What is the lesson here?" I was like, "I
Yeah.
feel like I've already learned this lesson. Why am I experiencing so much trauma?" But that victim mindset of like, "Why is this happening to me?" I really don't think serves us, and so I was able to shift out of that relatively quickly to, "Okay, I'm
What?
expanded in my capacity for pain and suffering and hardship, and I'm also on the other side of it expanded in my capacity for love and growth and strength." And I really believe that the more that you experience one, the more you get to experience the other. And so I really stepped into and sunk into that, like, okay, this is not something that I cannot handle. And I'm going to pull out all my tools to get through this. And one of my best friends said to me at the time, because I was kind of spinning out with my business, which we'll get into
Yeah.
at the beginning of 2024. She was like, "Your only job right now is to take care of you and take care of your husband. That's your only job, is to really focus on you and this baby that you have
Mhm.
inside of you, and really give yourself as much love as you can, and supporting your husband through this healing journey." And I was just like, "Okay, that's all I'm gonna focus on right now." And so that was a bit of permission, which I think a lot of times
Mhm.
we don't give ourselves that permission to let go
Right.
of some of the plates that we're holding
Mhm.
and really just focus on what's important. So one of the biggest lessons was just your health is your most important thing. I kind of, we know that in our
Yeah.
minds, but do we know that in our hearts? Are we practicing that? But that family is number 1, and to allow for the space, it's okay to let some things go,
Mhm.
to allow for the
Mhm.
space for what is most important in the period of life that you're going through.
Yeah. Very
Absolutely,
well
and
put, by the way.
absolutely. I also think that it's 100% okay to let yourself go into that kind of questioning and victim mindset for a moment, right? Give yourself the space to do it. It's like what that whole, what the grieving process is essentially, right? You go through all these different stages. So it's normal and okay to question, like, why is this happening to me? Especially if you are someone who has experienced a lot of trauma already. You're like, can I get a fucking break? Like, I've already been through this, this, and this, and life's been like coasting pretty well. Thought I was maybe out of it. I've experienced like the worst of it, and now we're going up. But then it's like, wham, knocks you back down. Like, are you kidding me? And I'm sure it's got to be hard to not get sucked too far into the hole of questioning, like, well, what's next? Like, obviously, life's not done throwing shit at me, so how do I keep taking this? Like, this isn't the end, this probably isn't the last thing. Like, you can just spiral into so many questions. And again, I think the important part is like, let yourself kind of go through those, but the the part that we want to avoid is getting stuck in them. And do you have any kind of advice or a tidbit or something to offer to somebody who might be going through that or has had a hard time coming out of those? Like, how did you tap into those tools that you had to kind of bring yourself back out of that and say, okay, here's my tunnel vision focus, like one step at a time?
Yeah. Super important because it's really easy to get, as you said, lost in the spiral of woe is me and depression, and this is really hard. And I think you said it, which is being in the grieving process and allowing yourself to be in that space of, yeah, this is hard and that's okay. Because a lot of people, when I first got back from the hospital, Brandon and I got home, I didn't want to go out. Like I didn't want to go to the grocery store. We live in a small town. I was like, I don't want to see people. I don't want to have to expend any energy, and it
Yes.
felt like a lot of energy to tell
Mhm.
people, like give people an update. I just didn't wanna I couldn't say anything. It's like I just that's too much effort. Um,
Mhm.
and that shifted relatively quickly after, 2 weeks maybe of being at home. I was like, "Okay, well, I can see people and just, like, have a boundary and say, we're moving through it." Like, I was admitting that it was hard. I wasn't
Mhm.
putting a mask on, which I think can be really hard in our society if, like, you ask people, "How are you doing?" And you kinda just expect the answer, "Fine."
Yeah.
And, I was just like, it's not fine. We're not okay, but that's okay."
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, just being like, "Yeah, this is hard, and I'm in it, and that's okay." But then also trying not to identify with those negative words all of the time was a strategy. I just was like, okay, this is hard. And with my close friends, I would vent about it and I would be in that negative space and I allow myself to cry and be in that process. But I also tried not to complain a ton because I
Mhm.
didn't want to put more energy into the hardship of it. So I was just like, okay, we're in it. And yes, this is hard. And I'm allowing myself to grieve, and then I also really focused on as much self-care as I could. I'm in general really good at that. Like, I love getting massages. I love doing things to take care of me. But allowing for that space, like, it really brought up a lot of boundary setting and uncovering of my own triggers through this process. So, for instance, in the past in our relationship, I have felt like my relationship with my husband, I felt like I have needed to be the responsible one and being the one to, like, solve all the problems, and with
Mhm.
him being a mania, it was a very outward facing, critical brain experience I was having, so anything that he felt or saw that was negative in someone else, and he was, like, in the side of his brain that was really looking for that, so it was very critical. So he was, like, mean, he was very mean to me, and I knew it wasn't him, so I could just
Mhm.
kinda, like, allow for it, but I would just be like, This isn't my problem to solve. This is on you." And normally, I think I would have been trying to sit with it a lot and, like, really be helpful, and that really taught me that actually, okay, I'm not I can't provide solutions for this. That has been my go-to over the years, not just to sit with empathy and compassion, but to always jump to the solutions, and so
Mhm.
that experience really taught me to not jump to the solution. It's not my problem to solve, and to allow myself the space to exit. I was like, okay, if you're just going to be mean to me, I need to go do this thing. And I'm not going to have any guilt around it. And I'm not going to have any shame around this boundary. I'm going to create time and space to take care of me, to be with my friends, to do what I need to do to maintain. I'm
Mhm.
doing a lot in this relationship regardless. But I really was able to come into, oh, it's not all on me. I don't need to do this. And so that really helped me, just kinda let go of, like, the responsibility piece and putting the boundaries of, like, okay, especially when he moved into the depression where he just wanted to vent to me. I was like, I can't listen to this all the time. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
have this much like, my capacity, actually, to be honest, at that point, was so little.
I'm
Yeah.
I was
sure.
like, "You got 2 minutes. Okay, tell me what's going on." Because,
Yeah.
when you're in, you're upset about something, as he was for a really long time, he was waking up hopeless. He wanted to chat about it and wanted to bare his heart, and I could not sit with it, and so that was really hard, but, that's what I had to do for just taking care of me, and so it was really like, we kinda had to fend each for ourselves for a while there.
Yeah. And
I
I
mean,
think that learning that lesson before being a parent is a good lesson to take into parenthood as well. Because there's some things that you just got to let your kid go through on their own. And even though it's hard to watch with your partner, with your kid, it's just like you said, like you're protecting you in order
mhm.
to be able to be there for them when they really, really, really need it, you know?
Yeah, that is so true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's huge what you both said, and I think it's, again, something that comes up around here often on the pod is, as women, like, the natural, like,
Nurture.
inclination to take care of things, problem solve, nurture, and we're putting ourself last, like, "How do I fix this? How do I fix this?" And it is very hard for us to let go of those things, let those people fly and figure it out for themselves because you just wanna jump in and save the day so bad. But especially I'm sure in motherhood, that it's like you have to let go so that your child learns, and then in a relationship, you have to let go because you can't be the only sounding board and the only, like, sound structure, like, it's a partnership, right? So you have to be able to work together, so you can't just be the one standing up and taking it all on. You have to learn how to fend for each other, or fend for yourselves at certain times, but also know when you can lean on each other. And when you're always just the one there to be leaned on, then, well, then you don't really have anyone. You don't have your way of getting things off your chest or being able to even let things go, and knowing that that person, again, like Amber said, kind of like your child, like, let them stand on their own 2 feet. You can't just take everything on yourself, but we do that a lot as women. And I know there's men out there too who are problem solvers and they want to be the pillar of the family or whatever, and be the one that fixes everything. So whether it's a man or a woman, if that's your just kind of personality, it it doesn't always serve us.
No, and I thought that I was really good at that. I thought that I was really good at taking care of myself and making sure that my cup was filled first.
Yes.
I prioritize working out. I get regular treatment like massages or
Mhm.
acupuncture. I eat really well. I read. I do journal exercises. Like, I, I haven't had a baby
Yeah.
for 35 years of my life. And so, like, I thought I was really good at taking care of myself. But what I didn't realize was that I had all of this mental load, and women experience this more in the household. We have more mental load with, oh, the trash needs to be taken out. We just notice things more.
Mhm.
Biologically, we have more space in our brains for managing the household. And so we take on more naturally. And
Mhm.
also, not only are we taking on more, but I realized that I was like, oh, as I said, I'm jumping to solutions all the time. Yeah, I'm taking care of myself, and I am prioritizing my me time, going out with friends and doing my workouts and making sure that my self care is great. But in this other way, I'm completely failing, which is not having boundaries around what I need to and can take on in the household.
Mhm.
I don't need to solve all the problems. And that's been really, to be honest, a really hard lesson for me to learn and to put into practice because, as you said, I want to do the thing. I want to take care of it. Oh, okay, if he's not going to do it, I guess I'm going to do it. And another thing that I learned is that don't have to be everything for our partners in the relationship. And in
Mhm.
fact, it's way better to have other people play those roles. I learned this a long time ago, actually, but that my husband doesn't need to be like my business consultant, and I can go to a friend that's also an entrepreneur and get that energy that I need. And same thing, I don't need to be his therapist. He can go to an actual therapist and have someone hold space for him in that way. We
Mhm.
don't need to be everything for one another. How can we best show up for one another? And let's focus on that. And so just allowing that space to be held in other humans was super important.
I think
Being
that's
on
really
community.
important, and I'm so glad you touched on that because I think it helps even me, whether you're a parent or not, or just someone in a relationship. And like, I put so much pressure on unknowing pressure, like on my partner. I'm like mad that he doesn't notice these things. And right. And some of these things are just, like you said, like biological. Like it just happened. Like he's not intentionally not checking, how much do we need to empty this tank? Is this trash out? Like, it's just not part of his daily I notice 1,000,000 things. My brain is, like, flipping through a Rolodex or something of information all day 24/7, and his is not. So it's like, I put that pressure on him, and then in turn, that makes me mad and internalize things, and it's just like, it's more negative for me, and he doesn't even know what the heck's going on, and so I'm in my head creating these, like, problems sometimes when really, if you just talk about them, right, kinda bring them up, a lot of them can be solved that way, or even just realizing, like, how much of some things are, like, my own internal, like, battles or triggers or traumas and things, and what's the real seed or root of this, and, it's helped a lot, like I said, to really hold on, is he doing this maliciously? Like, no, this is me, this is the way we're wired kind of thing, and this by no means am I saying like, "Oh, lay off the men, don't put any blame on them," but it is just truly about communication, and we have to be so much more open about it and realize that, at least for me, a lot of the conversations are happening in my head and not actually out loud,
Yes.
so I need to share some of these thoughts, and I do think that also I wanna touch on really quick what you said about not being everything for your partner. That is, again, I think a huge, huge thing because I think society and you know, romance movies and things and your perfect soulmate have put that thought into our mind that your partner, your soulmate, your person has to be someone who loves everything about you, loves everything that you do, does everything that you do, and you don't need anyone else in the world except for them. And I think that that is just so false. And it is true for some people, but it is not the rule, it's the exception. For the most part, like our partners, like I said, we need time away from each other. We need different sounding boards, and it is okay if you enjoy different activities and if you, like I said, aren't everything, for that person. So I think that's something we need to remember that you don't have to check 1,000,000 boxes. Figure out what your core values and important things are in a partner, what you truly need out of a person, and don't worry about these little things. "Oh, it'd be nice if my, boyfriend loved coffee so he could bring it to me in bed." But, like, that's not the make or break.
Yeah.
And so now you're going through all of these changes, not knowing whatsoever, as we never do, what life has in store for you, seeing these changes that Brandon's going through with the mania, depression, and just all of this while being pregnant. And as we mentioned, you have a business too, where in January, I think that's probably a huge time for an apparel business, especially a swim business, getting ready to launch into spring, which probably starts happening like end of February, March, and then into summer. It's got to be a crazy time for a business like yours. Like, how on earth did you manage that?
That was a lot. The first 2 quarters of the year in the swim were always business. The first let me rephrase that. The first 2 quarters of the year in the swimwear business were always the busiest. And so coming out of the brain injury and coming into, I need to put the wheels back on the cart to at least start making it down the road was, whoa, hard. But I was actually like, "Okay, let's do this. We've got a baby coming in August, and we need to make some moves. I had a partner in the swimwear company, and I was like, Rebecca, let's go. We need to our plan was to fundraise, get some money in. And we had been working on that for the past year. And so I was like, the time is now. We got to get some money in this business because I'm having a baby and we need to get people in the back end, not just me and you and our, we had a few part-time people, but I was like, we need someone to replace me while I take maternity leave.
Mhm.
And I was just like, great, we got to do this. And she actually presented to me a fundraising plan in March because I was pushing her. And at the end of that plan, she was like, okay, we could do all of this. Or, and I say this with the most love and support, and I'm in your corner 100%, you could take a pause. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? What does a pause even mean? I was really
Yeah.
taken aback because I was thinking, we still have suits to sell. Like, we just ordered 50 grand worth of product. We got to sell this. Uh, we have launches coming up. What do you mean I could take a pause? Yeah, August is we start to slow down, but we've people to pay. I don't understand how this is going to work. So I was just like, my heart was like, and I sat with that for about 2 months of like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, all right, let's just keep making progress on the goals and keep the wheels on the bus. Barely we're moving along, but we're just, I'm just doing it as I've been doing it for the past 13 years, which I want to talk about. That business felt like I was pushing a rock up the hill the entire time, but we'll come back to that. And at the end of the 2 months, I actually was working with a coach at the time, and we sat down and had gone through a few exercises. And she was like, what does it feel like if you just text Rebecca right now and tell her that you want to take a pause? And I give a lot of props to Rebecca because she is the one that gave me that permission. Let's talk about permission again, to say, ooh, and look at what is the right thing for me right now. She's like, you've been through so much. You're pregnant. This accident just happened. Like, give yourself a break. And I was thinking, no, what do you mean? But I sat with that, and my coach was like, just what feels right. And we went through a bunch of different exercises, and I was like, okay, I'm going to text her. And I just sent her a message and said, I want to take a pause. And I inherently knew that if I was going to take a pause, it was actually gonna mean a shutdown. And so I think that made that decision even harder because 2 year prior, I had been looking at what am I gonna do with this business? I'm losing a little bit of steam. I feel like I've taken it as far as I can, and what does an exit strategy look like? And I'd actually played around with letting it go,
Mhm.
but I couldn't physically do it at the time. I couldn't let it go. And then we come to April of last year, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna take a pause, and then I'm gonna shut it down by the end of the year." And so, like, leaning into just that first step of the pause of like, "Okay, this actually feels right," because I've been pushing so hard, like, just give myself a break. I don't need to push. I don't need to do this. Just like I don't need to be the one taking care of all of the needs of my husband. I don't need to be 100% solutions oriented. I can relax and take a break. And then stepping into that allowed me to step into, "Okay, actually, I don't wanna keep doing this." And the reason for that was because I was like, "I don't feel passionate about this anymore. I've been running this for 13 years. It's my whole identity." The company was called Sensi Grape Swim, and I had so much wrapped up in the success of it and what it would look like to not be running it anymore. People knew me because of the brand. People would be like, "Oh, you're Sensi? You do the swimsuits?" I'd be like, "Yeah, great, cool." People recognize me. And so there was a lot tied up in, who am I if I let this go?
Mhm.
And what identity do I still have without this? And am I a failure if I quit? And sunk cost fallacy and all of these things that I had to really work through to be like, actually, what's no longer serving me is pushing this rock. And I am on this planet for a brief period of time. And I want to do other things. I am passionate about doing other things. And so I went into the pause. We didn't communicate anything. I didn't even tell Rebecca because I was nervous about it until probably after the baby. Yeah, I think September, where I was like, okay, now I need to like really start planning this shutdown and plan all the communication. And I threw myself a retirement party and did a bunch of sales
Love it.
leading up into the shutdown. And it was really just, at that point, I was like, there's so much more power in letting this go than hanging on to it. I would
Mhm,
actually be bummed at myself if I did not have the strength to quit.
mhm,
Because quitting, it turns out, is something super powerful. And we have as a society so much attached to this idea of failure and quitting.
mhm,
There's a great book by Annie Duke called Quit. And she talks about how, as humans, we have all of these fallacies, sunk cost fallacy being one of them, where the time you invest in something makes you reluctant to let it go. Like if you're in a relationship for 4 years, you're like, I've been with this guy for 4 years. What? That's all this time.
yeah,
And you don't want to actually move on from it. There's a number of fallacies like that she goes into. And so reading that book kind of allowed me to be like, oh, wow, yeah, I'm hanging on to this because I feel the need to still prove something. And I have all these feelings wrapped up in it. But if I was to plot myself right now in the timeline here as who I am today and look at, do I want to keep doing this every day? The answer would be no.
mhm.
And so I shut down the business and I feel so good.
That's so good to hear. Well,
It was a
that's
long time to get to that decision, but it was 100% the right call.
I mean, I love bringing up the fact of, like, quitting because 'cause we've recently kinda talked about, like, failure and how reframing our mindset around failure, like, often we learn more from our quote unquote "failures," right? That's where you, "Okay, don't do that next time," kind of thing, and then you get better, and I'm wondering what your take too is on, like, quitting and, like, in these instances. Obviously, I think you feel much different when it is yourself in the situation. I've got a couple things in my life that I'm like, "Well, I don't wanna quit that without getting to, like, I didn't get to here, and get it to where I wanted to be, or I don't wanna leave when it is there, and I built it up so far, and I'm just gonna leave and let someone else take it the rest of the way to the success and just be forgotten about." That right there is ego, but with the quitting, I'm wondering about, like, just reframing that also, right? Like, you weren't quitting from my view, it had run its course for you, it was no longer serving you, and again, so much easier from the outside perspective to say, like, "You built this, and it's been amazing, and you served and helped so many people and so many women, and it had its purpose, and now it's not serving you, so you are just moving on." But as the person in this situation, I mean, yeah, how do we, like, we have to remove ourselves, I guess, from in our brain to make it look like, no, you didn't quit. Look at what you've done. And as you mentioned in that example, like, oh, I don't want to break up with this guy. Been with him for 4 years, and it feels like that time was wasted. You start thinking like, I wasted 4 years
Yeah.
of my life doing this, and I didn't get here or there. But it's like, no, we have to think about the good experiences we had and those learning experiences. Everything serves something, and it's not all just a waste of time. Because it's like, well, what would you have done in that 13 years or something without it, right?
Yeah. Oh, so good. There's so many nuggets that that I wanna dive into. As you said, you're like, quitting you didn't quit, you moved on, but I actually wanna reclaim the word quit because I do think, and Annie talks about this in her book, that it's a powerful thing, and there's a lot of good from quitting, and so I don't think it's a negative. I want us to shift that language
Mhm,
Yeah.
because it's not giving up. It's saying, "This is no longer serving me," as you said. I am more passionate about doing other things and I want to move on from this. And yeah, okay, quit has kind of a negative term to it. But like I said, I want us to reclaim that because I want to give permission to other people to evaluate what's going on in their lives. And I think this is the real key looking at why you are doing something. Why do you want to build a business? Why do you have the goal? Why do you want to be running the podcast? And plopping yourself down in the present moment and say, why is this important to me? And not just the surface level why, not just because I want to make money or I want freedom to travel. That's even too surface, but
mhm,
really getting deep behind it. And when I was looking at why I wanted to do the swimwear at that point in time still, it was from a place of ego. It was from a place of my identity is tied up in this. I'm not passionate about making product anymore. And I'm more passionate about this other thing, which is related to my deep why. And the thing that I'm more passionate about is speaking and mentoring on confidence and mindset. Because in that 13 years, and this is the real learning, like not a failure at all, but so much power in that 13 years, I went from not believing myself at all. I started that company 23 years old, not believing in myself. It was out of grit and resilience and a desire to prove myself.
Mhm.
My why was wrapped up in how I looked. I was like, I want to make awesome bathing suits. Not a deep enough why. And so when things would go wrong or I would fail at something, my ego would take a huge hit. And I'd be like, I feel like a failure. Why am I still doing this? But throughout that process, throughout that 13 years, I went from that to I'm on this planet for a reason. I am super impactful and inspiring. It is my job to lift up other women and to lift up other humans to feel worthy and enough because I really, truly believe that each of us has so much to offer the world. And when you're walking around totally open hearted and full of joy and feeling confident and impactful, that's how we change the world. And it
Hey,
just, that's such a deep why for me that
Mhm.
it brings tears to my eyes because I'm like,
Yeah.
this is important work. It doesn't matter if I look stupid or it doesn't matter if I quote fail.
Mhm.
If I trip going up on stage, okay, well it's not about me. It's
Mhm.
about the people that I'm showing up for. And that's something that comes from such a deep place.
Mhm.
It tugs on my heartstrings so much that once again, it's not about me. And so my why is like, okay, this is the business that I should be working on and want to be working on right now.
Mhm.
And I'm lucky in that, well, I mean, it took me 13 years, let's be honest.
Yeah,
It
see,
took me
you're n
13 years and a lot of work, but I do feel very lucky that I have that passion and
Mhm.
that purpose for what I want to do because that has it's really allowing me to step into that power and that ownership.
absolutely.
It's
That's
amazing.
beautiful.
I know, absolutely. I 100% agree, and I think that, yeah, it definitely hits home, and quitting does have that negative connotation. I usually think about it like in terms of sports, right? When you quit, and especially as a kid, and it's like, oh, you gave up, you just quit or something. But when I think about what comes to mind also is like ultra runs, right? And I have a friend who is a professional ultra runner, and this woman has completed so like she's just had great success, but she's also quit in the middle of races because it's not serving her mid race. She's literally her body is like, failing, and she has such a great attitude about it. She's like, "Yeah, wasn't my day. Sure, did it suck that I spent 100 days training for this and then I didn't complete it, but that's where I think, you mentioned quitting actually shows how much strength you have because if you stay in it, that's the ego winning. You are most likely doing something that's more harmful for yourself if you're staying in it, whether it's mentally, physically, emotionally, than just knowing when you've had enough and quitting. Like it's just not for you. And like I said, taking away the negative connotation, I think is a much better way than like reframing the word quit. Because like, yeah, you're quitting it, but again, it doesn't have to be negative because it will bring you more positive results than if you just push through. And then now, like you said, if you were in right here in it today, like you probably wouldn't be as happy. You'd be forcing yourself through it, going through the mud, and just back to like a questioning state and not having that passion that's feeding you, rather waking up every day like, oh, I have to do this, and not seeing the true purpose of it anymore.
That's exactly right. Although you made a good point too, which is that going through hard things is important.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
it's that balance of knowing when it's gonna be harmful to your health or, if she continued on and perhaps have an injury because of it, and or is it just because things got hard and you wanna give up? So,
Yeah.
there is a balance, right?
Hmm.
Because I wanted to quit 1,000 times in that business. I wanted to
Yeah.
give up so many times, and I'm obviously really glad that I didn't at that time, but then there came a point when, yeah, I did wanna give up, and it was the right time, and so I we do wanna teach people, and, like, my son, I'm thinking about that while you're speaking, just like, yeah, I do want him to go through hardship and
Mhm,
have resilience and do things even though they're difficult and not give up just
mhm,
because they're hard. But that once again goes back to the why you're doing something. We know the road is going to be a roller coaster, and to make it through the hard times, you have to realize, okay, why am I in it? And
mhm.
keep pushing through, because being a human is hard, running a business is hard, life is hard,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Exactly. That's okay, and it's a very good point, like, we need adversity, we have to go through the hard things, and it can be a very, very fine line of knowing, am I just quitting because it's hard, or is it because, like, yeah, the purpose, the why, that all that isn't there. So, like I said, I think when you get in those moments, come back to that why, right? And that can be the reevaluation you need. It's like, okay, do I still feel this is serving the greater purpose that I set out to in the first place, or am I just having a tough day, a tough week, like, because again, as women, we go through those cycles that it can just be one of those weeks that you're like, the world is on top of me, or moments in life like you had major life changes in this year that it's like, you could have came to that why and like, "No, I still feel it, still have the passion. This is just a hard time and we'll get through it, and maybe I'll take a pause and that will kind of reignite me." But at that point, you came to like, "Nope, my life is now going this way. My why now lies here. So it is time to close the chapter and move on." And I do think as we get older too, especially again with societal norms and things put on us, that being in your mid-30s and later and, like, later in life, we have a conversation coming up with a woman in her 50s that this was she was excited to talk about just, like, age, right? Like, no, it just doesn't matter. Don't let that stop you from making changes in your life when you feel ready for them, or even if you don't feel ready for them, just don't let that fear stop you, and a lot of times, the fear of our age stops us from taking a risk. Like, "I'm too old to make this pivot." Like, so you were 23 when you started your business, started Sensi Swim, and now you're a mother in your mid-30s. I mean, did was that scary to you to be like, "Well, how do I start something new at this stage in my life?" Did you feel, like, a little terrified there?
Becoming a mom?
Of, like, being a mom and being just older now 13 years later and, being at the starting stage, like, starting something new, being at the beginning stage instead of coasting in a stage that you were comfortable in.
That's a great question, Taryn. Ooh, I mean, the short answer is no. I'm just trying to get into the crux
Yeah,
of why, and I think it's because I'm so excited about it.
yeah.
And I love being a beginner. I
Mhm,
think reframing the idea of being a beginner is super important, because being a beginner allows you to come into something with fresh eyes and a new project, and like, I don't know what I don't know, and
mhm,
I'm excited to learn. Growth is one of my core values. And I think that's another way that you can do a little touch point with where am I at in my life and what do I want, is to evaluate what your values are. If you've never done values work, dive into it and see, am I living a life in line with my values? Because that to me is a successful life. There's so
yep,
many definitions of success out there. You could have your success marker be, I want to make this much money, or I want to usually they're related to money, let's be
mhm.
honest. I'll be a
Absolutely.
successful when I get the next raise. It's like we oftentimes move our marker of success so much that we never actually get there, and we never sink into, I am successful, I'm doing a really great job. And so for me, I look at, am I living in life with my values? That to me is success. And also, did I show up and did I try? That to me is success.
Mhm,
And that actually came about because I'll share a quick story. Every year in my swimwear company, I would set goals. I would set visibility goals and metrics goals. And, you come over to my house on January 1st, it's like an explosion of journals and tarot cards and magazine clippings. And every year I would set a revenue goal. How much swim do we want to sell for the year? And that would be like my big goal, because that would drive everything. And I was so attached to this number. And every year for 6 years, I failed to hit that goal. I never hit the goal. And I would get to December of the year and I'd be staring down the last month and being like, oh my gosh, we're not going to hit the goal. And for a long time, like a whole month, I would feel like a failure and I'd want to give up and I didn't feel successful. I certainly didn't feel impactful or confident. And then I heard a story about a room full of powerful women. And the moderator posed a question. She said, who here feels successful? And this is a room full of really high level, high earning, super impactful, influential women. And one woman stood up and she was like on the cover of Forbes magazine and was the CEO of a big company and owned a private island and was wearing all designer clothes. And
Girl.
she said, no, I don't feel successful. I still want us to hit this much revenue and I want to lead my team to this. And I still have these things to do. I don't feel successful. And then another woman stood up and the moderator asked, do you feel successful? And she said, heck yes, I woke up today. And I was like, all right,
Okay.
that's just it. That's just it,
Yeah.
isn't it? If my marker of success is I woke up today, I walk around already feeling successful. Like, what? Like, I'm confident, I'm amazing, I'm enough. That is going to bring you so much more energy and enthusiasm for your goals. You are going to be way more likely to hit your success metric. And
Uh-huh.
so we need to reverse engineer this idea and reclaim, like, I call it lowering our marker of success. Lower your
Uh-huh.
marker of success so that you can show up every day feeling successful. For me, that's did I show up and did I try? Then I'm
Yep.
successful. And so coming into this, it's like, no, I just need to show up and I need to try. That's it. And
Uh-huh.
because I feel passionate about the work that I'm doing and I know that it's helpful, it's easy for me to show up.
And shed light on being grateful for just the basics,
Yeah.
waking up,
Yeah.
making it through the day without having to be like end up in the hospital, like
Yeah.
just it gives you just the basic gratefulness of life.
Absolutely. I think that's huge. We've talked a little bit about it with like goal setting and like when setting a goal, it doesn't have to be this crazy thing, this crazy number, but and honestly, like it needs to challenge you in a way, but there's a balance, a fine line of what that marker is and you just have to find I think internally for yourself like where that lies. And I think it's a great idea to really set it at the basics. Like, I'm sure,
Yep.
Amber, for you, I feel like you've said this before just with parenthood, is like, "Did I get my kid to bed today with, like, like, all limbs intact and, like,
Yes.
we made it through the day, then great, I'm momming well," you know? Like
Got got some vegetables in them. We're good to go.
Yeah,
Lots of
Truly,
vegetable in them as
truly.
a win.
I love it. Well, Sensi, this has been amazing to chat with you. I think it's been just enlightening for anyone out there listening of again kind of reclaiming or reframing however you want to look at it like quitting and moving on knowing that throughout life we have different chapters and when we're moving on from that chapter like try not to look back on the previous one as like a waste of time. Try to find the good nuggets in those years in those times and not feel that you've wasted it or that you failed because you didn't reach those revenue goals in 6 years. So a lot of people could leave and quit the business and without having reached those goals and like, man, I totally blew that business. Like, no, you didn't at all. And so again, it's so much mindset wrapped into everything that we
Mhm.
do, but I think these are reminders that we just all constantly need because again, when it's yourself and you're going through it, you're going to be the most critical of yourself than anyone else is. And it really takes kind of removing yourself from the situation, looking at it from someone else's perspective, I think to keep that positive light, to move on in a positive way. And through everything you've gone through, it's the fact that you are still just a radiant, shining light through it and finding the positivity and, moving without fear because you truly know you're moving with your passion and purpose is amazing and just like inspiring to others. And I'd love for you to share with the audience too where people can find you, how they connect with you now. Like, what is it that you're doing now? You've alluded to speaking and things, but yeah, how can people follow along now that Sensi Swim has been kind of sunsetted?
Yes, sensigraves.com. is where everything is now housed. I'm focusing on mentoring women in career who are career oriented or women in male dominated fields, overcome imposter syndrome, create more confidence, and increase their belief in themselves. And I'm speaking on those same topics. And so if you have a team or a company that needs some positivity and reframing on how to show up with the most confidence so you can be impactful, then go to sensigraves.com. I'm also on Instagram at sensigraves. And then I do also put on women's kite and wing camps and retreats. So we offer beginner wing camps now, or intermediate kite camps, and that is strutkiteboarding.com, STRUT. And so those are my two big focuses, and all still involving empowering women. And I'm just thrilled to be doing this work.
I love it. Everybody out there, go follow Sensi if you're not already. And is Sensi Swim still like? Do you have any like kind of overstock or anything you're getting rid of too that people could go try and get a last chance suit?
Yeah, I
Or
have about 100 pieces left, and so if you message me on Instagram, I'll send you the little line sheet. Everything's $25. We have very few sizes. I think it's only extra small, small, and extra large, and double XL. That's just a few smalls, so sizing is limited, but there's still some cute things. So yeah, send me a
awesome.
message.
Very cool. Well, thank you again so much for just sharing your story, shedding light on these topics, and speaking about them. And anyone out there, so you know where to find her, and she's your gal if you need that confidence boost and how to find your inner confidence and just keep moving through life in that powerful, successful, you woke up today way.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, thanks everybody for listening, and we will talk to you next week. We hope you enjoyed this episode and would do us a huge favor, since we don't have any sponsors or anything like that, and would rate and review us on whatever platform it is you use, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, whatever it is. And if you're listening and downloading just through the website, tearingituppodcast.com, leave comments. We'll definitely engage back with you. And on social media right now, we're just on Instagram. Tearing It Up Podcast is the handle. Like the post, share the post, comment on the post, whatever it is you got. Show us your love so we just stay relevant and show up in the rankings at all. So again, rate and review, please. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.